Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. Thanks so much for watching this episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, would really appreciate if you do, and certainly love it when you leave comments down below. Let me know what I'm doing well and what I'm doing wrong. This past season, not too much went wrong for the Royals, coming off of a 94-64 record, AL Central champions, and more importantly, World Series champions. We did get a huge boost to our budget as the offseason began, moved from $242 million to $262 million. So that gives us a lot of money to play with as free agency is starting today. The issue is that there's not a ton of really interesting free agents out there, at least in terms of frontline talent. And the other thing that happened to us is that Dylan Cruz, who had been looking for a $27 million-ish a year extension for 3 years that we did not want to bring back, we made him a qualifying offer, and he decided to accept that qualifying offer. So we've got about $19 million on the books with him next year that we would prefer not to have in terms of the money that we're paying him. And also because we want to open up a spot for the young outfielder Mike McNeil. And we also potentially need to open up a spot for the young outfielder first baseman Jonathan Ojeda. So we don't really have a lot to do with our everyday players. Really happy with the lineup that helped us win the World Series last year, and feel that the additions of Ojeda and McNeil will more than offset the loss of Cruz. So honestly, we want to subtract to our everyday players by figuring a way to get rid of Cruz. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of demand for him at that salary right now. But we'll have to figure out how to proceed there. And then on the pitching side, we have 6 players who hit free agency. So we've only got 8 pitchers right now at the major league level. Fortunately, the top 3, Ben Borgman, Caleb Lagerwell, and Eddie Chavera, are our top 3 starters. And we don't really need to go for a frontline starter, but would certainly like to think about getting someone a little more durable and a little more of an everyday starter than the aging Tyler Bosma or Bryce Hubbard to potentially be the 4th and or 5th starters in our rotation. So would like to add a starter, but it doesn't need to be an ace. We recently signed Chavera to a long extension, bought out the last 3 years of his arbitration and the first 3 years of his free agency potentially. So should have him around for a long time to come. Got the staff younger by bringing him on board. And then the other big move that we made, Bobby Whit Jr., our longtime perennial Gold Glove winner, perennial All-Star. We have he opted out of his contract at the end of the season, and we did sign him to an extension that we believe should take him hopefully through the end of his career. You can see it's a bit front-loaded, $40 million this year, followed by 37, 34, 30, 25. And then there's a potential vesting option for $20 million in his age 39 season if he plays 120 games the year before. So we're definitely overpaying in the early years of the contract, and it's conceivable by the time he's in his late 30s, we'll be overpaying then. But given that he's kind of been the centerpiece of this playthrough since we brought him up in 2022, the first year of this playthrough as a rookie, I'm glad that we potentially got him signed for the remainder of his career with the Kansas City Royals. Hopefully we can make a push to potentially get him to 3,000 hits. He's going to have to be pretty healthy and pretty effective over the next 6 seasons to get there, but certainly has an outside chance of getting to 3,000 hits and finishing up a potential Hall of Fame career with the Royals 6 years from now. And I mentioned that the free agent pool was a little unimpressive. As I mentioned also, we don't really need any everyday position players, so the fact that there's not a lot out there doesn't hurt us much. But we do need to add some pitchers. We're just not all that thrilled with the starters that are out there. There's definitely players who could help our bullpen and probably will look to add some of them in the coming days, weeks, and months. But as far as starting pitchers, and we went through all of these kind of top guys in our past episode, just no one all that exciting. We do only kind of need, as I mentioned, a 4 or 5 kind of starter. But for the money some of these players are looking for, we're not all that excited about bringing on any of them right now. So hopefully we can find a way to add to our pitching staff, likely through trade. The issue right now is that not a ton available on the trading block either when you look at starting pitchers and when you look in general, just players in general. Not a ton out there. You know, 2 of the top players out there are Gordon Graceffo, our longtime starter who's now in the bullpen, and Alfredo Mena, a young shortstop who we just aren't really going to have a spot on the team for going forward, given all of the good young youth we have ahead of him in the infield. So presumably over the coming months there will be more and more players kind of added to the trade block. But right now there's not a lot out there, so we may try to do a player search. The other thing we are going to do is we are going to add Dylan Cruz to the trade block. I don't think there's going to be a lot of demand for him, but if there is any, we would like to hear about it. And we're obviously going to keep working the market to get rid of him before the season gets started. And we did do a player search just to find players who have enough stamina to start and have plus stuff, movement, and control. As you can see, 3 of the people who meet this criteria are already on our team in our 3 top starters, Borgman, Chivera, and Lagerwell. There's Contreras, who we had on the team last year, picked him up on a 1-year deal as a free agent. Don't think we'll be bringing him back with the money he's looking for right now. There's some incredible pitchers out there when you look at a 25-year-old like Alex Rojas with the Toronto Blue Jays. He hasn't been incredibly successful at the major league level yet with 5 ERAs. But you look at that pitching profile and you would think that he's going to be a pretty effective pitcher someday. The issue is, we literally have no one who we can get for him. If we trade away our best starting pitcher prospect, Jose Carranza, who's probably a few years away. He was our number 1 pick back in 2023, number 71 prospect in baseball, but he just turned 20 years old and he still hasn't gotten out of rookie ball. Even if we throw him into the deal, we also have to add another top prospect or top major league player to get him on board. Like for instance, Dan Keogh here. If we wanted to add in basically our top 2 pitching prospects in our system, Jose Carranza, who we think can be a very good starter maybe in 3 or 4 years, and then Dan Keogh, who made it up to AA last year and is going to be potentially a starter for us the season after next. If we get rid of both of them, then we can pick up Rojas. Price seems a bit high to me. Certainly Rojas is actually established at the major league level, but I think there's a pretty good chance that both Carranza and Keogh are going to develop into solid major league starters. So I don't know that that's a trade that we want to make, but and as I mentioned, we don't necessarily need a front of the rotation starter. We basically just need a solid starter to get us through a couple of years, honestly, until we can start bringing up people like Keogh and Carranza. So we would definitely prefer not to be trading those guys away. Bryce Hillman of the Pirates is somebody that may meet our needs, though. He's a veteran. He's going to be 31 years old by next season. He's making about $15 million for each of the next 2 years. He's been a slightly above average pitcher over the course of his career with a 101 ERA plus and a 96 FIP minus. He's making decent money for what he is, which I think is kind of a 3rd or 4th starter. But I do like the fact that he's a little younger than Borgman and Lagerwell. He would slot in as an excellent number 4 starter for us. And we're not making a long-term commitment by bringing him on board. so we can potentially open up space 2 years from now if we decide to move on from him for some of the young pitchers that I just mentioned. Also a good personality. The fans will like having him on board. And the demands for him are not crazy. There's a fair amount of major league players they're interested in, but there's a fair amount of prospects too. I think we might be able to get something done for Hillman. And the player I'm most willing to give up of that crew is Jimmy Fallow. He was our number 1 draft pick back in 2030. He's only made it to high A ball, but he is a third base / corner outfield type prospect. And as you know, we've got a ton of corner outfielders coming up through our system who are a little older and a little younger than him. Doesn't look like he's going to have a huge home run bat. And then now, even if we wanted to turn him into our third baseman, Bobby Whit Jr. is going to be blocking that for him for the next 5 to 6 years. So I don't see him having a huge role on the team in the future. He's a good prospect, don't get me wrong. But given the kind of logjam of young talent that we have in both our infield and our outfield, don't see a huge role for him going forward. And as I said, Hillman, bringing him on for 2 years as our 4th starter, the top of that rotation with Borgman, Lagerwell, Chivera, and Hillman would be as good as it's ever been, I believe. But we're also not making a real long-term commitment to him. So if 2 years from now, some of those youngsters we've talked about are ready to contribute to the rotation, we can just follow what Anna and Elsa said and let them go. Let it go. So I'm thinking about this. I'd love if they'd retain a little bit of that contract. Yeah, they'll only retain 5% of it. This is the Pirates that we're dealing with, but we'll see if we can maybe put something together that gets them to keep a little bit more of the money. But I think this is a pretty intriguing trade for us, given that we're still a win-now team. And we do have an offer where they'll keep 40% of his money. So then, he's going to be making less than $10 million a year from us, actually closer to $9 million a year from us, which I think is really good value for him. We have to put in Bill Rios, who is a guy that we just picked up from Miami a couple weeks ago when we were kind of going through our preparation for the beginning of the offseason. Juan Palomares, who was once a up-and-coming prospect in our system, still has a great personality, but he's headed into his last option year and just didn't have a role on our team. You can see he hasn't been up in the majors since 2033 with the glut of players that we had in the infield. Just kind of didn't want to be having to pay him a major league contract of $700,000 minimum. So we traded him away to bring Rios on board, who we liked a little more because he's got a couple of option years left. But again, he's another corner outfielder, doesn't have a ton of power, already almost 26 years old. And throwing him into the deal, they'll keep another 35% of his money. I think that's a pretty good return ultimately for Palomares to turn it into over $5 million a year in additional money that the Pirates will keep. So given that we don't love the free agent pitchers that are out there, we are going to part with our number 1 draft pick from a few seasons ago and Bill Rios to bring on Bryce Hillman as our number 4 starter for the next few years. And the fans are happy we've got Hillman on board. Our fan interest is already above 100, but that will help a bit with that. You can see we're only in for Hillman for about $9 million a year for each of the next 2 years. I think this is probably going to be our big move for this offseason, quite honestly. Actually, the big move would be if we can figure out a way to get rid of Cruz. But Actually, theoretically, it sounds like Hillman's going to slot in as our 3-starter ahead of Chivera, but really like the top 4 in this rotation right now. And the other thing I liked about Hillman is that he's also durable. So we had a lot of fragile pitchers in our rotation, with the exception of Caleb Lagerwell for many years. Now at this point, Lagerwell's normal injury proneness in both Hillman and Chivera are durable. So feel like we've kind of strengthened our rotation, not just in terms of quality, but hopefully in terms of the quantity of innings we'll be getting out from people, getting from people over the course of the year. And you can see that we still only got 9 pitchers on the pitching staff right now, so we are going to need to be more active in free agency. But I think that was a really good trade for the Royals for the next couple of years. And then, as I mentioned, hopefully about the time Hillman is going to be becoming a free agent, Dan Keogh and some of the other prospects will be ready to contribute. And we have done an updated search to shop Cruz around. We have to throw in, or we chose to throw in, to kind of get some level of interest, Alfredo Mena, who was our second-round draft pick 2 years ago. Made it up to AAA. He did hit only .229 there this year. Profiles as probably a below-average offensive player, but a pretty solid and versatile glove. I just don't see us having space for him. He's going to turn 24 years old before next season. As you know, we've got a bunch of kind of 25, 26, 27-year-old infielders who are better than him, who are still in their league minimum, moving towards their arbitration eligible years. So I just don't see Mena being a big part of our team going forward. Now, it stinks that we have to throw him in to potentially get rid of Cruz, given that we could have just not made a qualifying offer to Cruz and not been dealing with this. But I really want to get that money off the books, so we're going to explore the different variety of options that we've got in front of us here. And it's kind of interesting. Our former ace, Spencer Bauer, the Braves are willing to pass him along to us. You can see he's now wrecked physically. I haven't checked in on him in a few years now. He had a good first year, or a respectable first year away from us in Atlanta, and hasn't been great with 5.04, 4.40, and 5.76 ERAs the last 3 seasons. Looks like he was 3-7 in 18 starts this past year, and obviously had some more injuries. So he's wrecked now physically, and they're still paying him over $25 million a year this year. Presumably they will decline that team option, but I think we got out on Bauer right about the perfect time. We got a lot of solid years from him, including a Cy Young Award winning season in 2027 when we won our first World Series. And then we still were able to get 150-plus innings out of him pretty much those last 4 years he was with us, despite his health issues. So, and you can see, 3.49 ERA, 120 ERA plus, and 82 FIP minus while he was with us has definitely been worse since he went to the Braves. So that was a good move on from him, I believe. And we got an interesting offer from the Dodgers, and they'll actually accept it, which is good. You may remember that the Yankees, we thought we had a deal with at the end of our last episode for Cruz, kind of showed up in the trade offer, and then when we pulled it up, they were like, NFW, we're not touching that contract. We have to give up Mena, who's almost 24 years old, former second-round pick, but we can get Jonathan LaRosa in return. He was a 4th-round pick in a year after we picked up Mena. He's not as good defensively and probably not as good offensively. He does have a good personality, but still, 3 option years left under a minor league contract. Mena at this point, actually Mena still has the 3 option years. I'm trying to talk myself into why this is good. We're still definitely losing by picking up LaRosa instead of Mena, but it's not a huge subtraction to get Cruz off of our books. And we were also able to get the Dodgers to throw in $450,000 also. So I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. We're definitely losing in terms of the quality in this trade, because as much as I don't think there's a spot for Mena going forward, there's also not a spot for La Rosa going forward, and I don't think he's as good a prospect. But it gets Cruz off of our books, and La Rosa still probably has some trade value, not as good as Mena's if we want to move on from him or use him to bring on some talent that might be more useful to us. So I'm going to go ahead and complete this trade, get Cruz off the books, and then we can really kind of start position ourselves for next season. Happy that Cruz is gone. He was a good player for us for a couple of years, and now we've got a lot of money available in free agency, though. Still have good fan interest, or perfect fan interest of 100, even after moving on from him. So it ended up costing us to make that qualifying offer to him, but I don't think the cost was prohibitive, and I like the fact that we've got that money off of the books now. And we've also opened up the spot for the youngsters like McNeil and Tejada to get some significant playing time at the major league level next year. And we're also doing a search for just any pitchers who have excellent stuff, plus movement and plus control. Don't care about stamina. This is more to find some potential pitchers for the bullpen. You can see there are 3 free agents who meet the criteria. Issue is Morgan McSweeney is fragile and 37 years old. Jose Garces is wrecked physically. He is only 30 years old, looking for $4.6 million, as opposed to McSweeney, who's looking for $13.6. And then Min-Ho Choi is interesting, coming over from South Korea. He's already 31 years old. He's been a solid pitcher over the course of his career in the Korean Baseball League. 129 ERA plus, 73 FIP minus over there. Profiles as a pretty solid reliever based on his ratings. Both our head scout and the OSA like him. Our head scout likes him a little bit more. He is an extreme fly ball pitcher who doesn't throw incredibly hard, so could give up some homers, but Kauffman Stadium probably not the worst place in the world for a pitcher like that. So he's an option. But there's also a lot of experienced players that we could look at. One, you can see we only have one pitcher on our team, defending Cy Young Award winner Ben Borgman, who meets the criteria that we've laid out here. But our former closer, Austin Roberts, who we moved on from years ago, has had a really nice career, and we moved on from him because we didn't want to be paying a reliever that much. But with the huge boost we got in money for this coming season, and the fact that he's only signed for one more year, I would assume that Atlanta doesn't just want to get rid of him. He's obviously not on the trade block. But if they're willing to deal him for something reasonable in this final year of his contract, not even an option. Austin Roberts does not want to come back to Kansas City. Whew. Could have been potentially an interesting reunion, but I guess you don't like winning World Series, Austin, because the only one that you've won was back in 2027 with Kansas City. We've won 2 more since you left. You haven't won any. Felipe Tejada of the Diamondbacks, similar, 36 years old, making $8.6 million, so he's making a lot of money. But over the course of his career has been a pretty effective relief pitcher, pretty experienced closer. If his price was reasonable, we would certainly think about bringing him on board. Looks like they're mostly looking for really good major league players or really good prospects, but we'll see if we can piece something together to maybe bring Tejada on board, since we don't love a lot of the free agents that are out there, and it's just a one-year commitment, and we've got a lot of money right now for this upcoming season to spend. All right, I think we've pieced together a decent deal for Tejada. He would definitely be a good arm for our bullpen. And again, I don't mind spending $8.6 million on him. It's just a one-year commitment. We've got money to spend this coming season, and we've actually structured a deal where they'll keep 25% of it. And we'll get Rodolfo Falcon, a 24-year-old corner outfielder, in return. He's already fragile. He does have 3 option years left, so not a horrible guy to get back. The issue is we're giving up one left fielder prospect who's much better. We picked up Arturo Rivas from the Yankees when we traded away our reliever Zach Green right before the trade deadline last year. He's another guy who is a corner outfielder that just doesn't fit into our plans right now. And he's only got 1 option year left as opposed to the 3 of the player that we'd be getting in return. Now, Rivas is definitely better when you look at that home run power, but he's not as good defensively, and I just don't see him having a huge role for us this year, whereas Tejada probably takes over as our closer. And then we also have to throw in Josiah Simpson, who's another corner outfield. He was our number 1 pick back in 2029. Hasn't made it above Double-A ball at this point. Very good defensively, just not much of a hitter. Never really developed, and he's almost 27 years old, so I don't view that as a big loss. But ultimately, we clear a little bit of the log jam at the corner outfield position in our minor leagues, getting rid of 2 youngish left fielders for 1 younger left fielder, and we bring Tejada on board to likely be our closer next year. Don't love giving up Rivas, but we're not going to really have a spot for him because guys like McNeil and Tejada are younger than him, and I think better all-around players than him already. So if we can get a closer for next year as we try to repeat as champions for him, I think it's a good move for us. And the fans were actually very excited that we brought on Tejada. So although there's not a ton available, as we've talked about in the free agent market, I think through these trades that we've been looking at, we are bringing on some guys to the team who can help us, and would certainly expect Bobby Crosby to slot Tejada in as our closer. So I think we're making some progress this offseason. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a little intrigued by Min-Ho Choi. Looking for $6.5 million, but we've got money to spend. He's going to give up some home runs. He's got slightly above average movement, but he's an extreme fly ball pitcher who throws in the low to mid-90s. But I think he could be an interesting arm for our bullpen. And I'm also a little intrigued by Garces, too. I don't love the fact that he's wrecked physically. If he's looking for multiple years, that might be a problem. If we can make a 1-year offer to him and bring him on board. I feel like if we can add Garces and Choi in addition to the Tejada and Hillman trades that we've just made, bring in a lot of potentially really solid pitchers onto our staff. The issue with Garces is whether he's going to remain healthy. The issue with Choi is whether at 31 years old, coming over from the Korean Baseball League, how effective is he going to be against major league hitters? And Garces is looking for a 4-year contract at $4.6 million a year. There's no way we're going to give that to a wrecked 30-year-old reliever. And we're also not going to promise him the closer role now that we've brought Tejada on board. So he's probably not going to be excited with our offer. We're willing to give him $5 million for this upcoming season. And we'll have a team option for next year if he's healthy. Maybe we'll keep him around. He's willing to think about it. So gave him a little more money, but a lot less years and optionality. So it's really a 1-year contract if we want to move on. So I think that potentially makes sense. And then we are also going to see exactly what Min-Ho Choi is looking for as a reliever also. $6.5 million a year for 2 years. And he wants a no trade clause, and he wants to be the closer. So we're going to have to adjust this somewhat. So he was looking for $6.5 million a year over 2 years. We're offering him an average of $5.5 million a year over 2 years, not guaranteeing him a role as a closer, and again putting a second-year team option on it to give us a potential escape if he doesn't work out. He's willing to think about that also. So I don't love either of those potential relievers, but by the same token, we're not making long-term commitments to either of them. And if one of them hits and is a real effective reliever for us next year, I think we're okay. And Min-Ho Choi seems reasonably interested in our offer, but still going to listen to other teams. We still got a couple weeks or a week and a half till the winter meetings start, and close to 2 weeks till they end. So not going to shock me if we don't hear too much from either of the relievers that we've made offers to until we get out of the winter meetings. And we have gotten Garces signed, so we didn't have to wait till the winter meetings to hear back from him. Again, I don't love the fact that he's wrecked physically. And if you look at his stats over the course of his career, he's been kind of a average-ish major league pitcher. But I think with our excellent defense behind him, using him in a bullpen role, I think we can get a little more out of him than other teams have. I have a lot of confidence in our scout, who's a excellent scout, and he seems to like him. OSA is reasonably high on him. He's not going to be closing for us since we've already got Tejada in that role, and probably will still have Bob Williams as our primary setup man. So as a solid arm in the bullpen, I think he can definitely help us this coming year. And I was wrong. We didn't have to wait till the winter meetings. Min-Ho Choi has signed with us also. So fans are excited to have him on board. I think he profiles as another good, solid right-handed reliever. So I like the short contracts we got with both Garces and Choi. We've got the option to get out after this season if it doesn't work out. And we've got the option to keep him next year if it does work out. So I think both of those deals are good for us. A little more than you necessarily might have to spend on a reliever, but I think these guys are also potentially better than a replacement level major league reliever. So definitely feeling better about our pitching staff after the trades for Hillman and Tejada and the signings of Garces and Choi as free agents. We are definitely not as left-handed centric as we have been the last few years. Basically, if Bosma does end up being the number 5 starter for us, we've got only one lefty in the bullpen right now in Bryce Hubbard. So finding a southpaw or two is probably one of our big goals. Now we do in AAA have Jaden Woods, 32-year-old lefty who has been up and down for parts of the past few years, was not actually in the majors at all this past season, but he's kind of, at least in terms of his ratings, a replacement level-ish type left-handed pitcher. Is a little more effective against lefties than righties. He's certainly somebody that we could bring up if we needed to, but obviously would love to find someone who's a little more effective to hopefully get some action out of the bullpen against left-handed batters for us. Looking at the left-handed pitchers available among free agents, Josh Hader, who was our closer several years ago, still closing, going to be 41 next year, but 41-year-old who's fragile physically, looking for close to $9 million a year. Just think that you're asking for injuries with somebody like that. I'm a little intrigued by Jesus Bibbs. He wants to be a starter, but he's not a starter. That changeup just isn't good enough, but he does have a very good fastball, a very good slider, very good control. He'd get a boost to his stuff as a reliever. He's a ground ball pitcher who throws in the high 90s. And he's definitely more effective against lefties than he is against righties. And he's supposedly only looking for $1.5 million a year. He is fragile in terms of his injury proneness. But if we can get him willing to come on board as a relief pitcher, I think it might be interesting. Yeah, I mean, we're going to not promise him a starting role. And I actually want to make it more than a one-year deal. We'll put a team option on it in case it does work out. I like to keep that optionality. But I think as a reliever, he could be pretty interesting. He wants more money. Doesn't want to be tied up that long. And he still wants to be a starter. No, you're not going to be a starter for us. We'll give you the $1.6 million for 1 year, but you're not going to be a starter. All right, he's willing to think about it. All right, we're still waiting to hear back from Jesus Bibbs, whether he'll join us as a lefty out of the pen, but we do have the Rule 5 draft coming up shortly. We've got 7 spots on our secondary roster, so definitely have the option to protect some of these players. 36-year-old Carter Binns was in AAA for us last year. If someone wants him, they can have him. Andrew Bonds is a 25-year-old closer, did get up to Omaha at the end of last year. Picked him up in a trade with San Diego before the trade deadline, and he was pretty solid. Given that we've had a lot of turnover in our bullpen, he could be someone who could be playing a role for us this coming year. Definitely want to put him onto the 40-man roster, so we won't be losing him. Parker Coyle is a 30-year-old pitcher. He was our 5th-round pick back in 2025. Good personality, but he's 30 years old. He's going to be 31 years old in January. We've never brought him up to the majors. You can see looking at these stats, he's been at AAA for us for 5 straight years without ever sniffing the majors. So I don't feel the need to protect him. If someone wants to bring him on board, they can. Rodolfo Falcon is the guy that we just picked up in the trade with Arizona. Don't want to lose him. He's probably in AAA for us this year, but is a guy who, if we have some injuries in the corner outfield spots, could potentially play a role for us this upcoming season. So we're going to put Falcon onto the 40-man. And then of the 2.5 kind of star players, Daniel Smith, who is a solid young hitting prospect. He's a DH/first baseman. I guess you could play him in left field if you wanted to. He really doesn't have a position, though. He's a pure hitter, makes pretty good contact, doesn't strike out much, but average-ish home run power. Not the best eye, not going to walk a lot. He's honestly kind of similar to Juan Palomares, who we had on the team a few years ago and just recently traded away, as I talked about. So not the greatest prospect in the world, but somebody that could contribute for us. So we're going to put him up onto the 40-man roster, and then just look, there's a few other players out there with pretty good potential coming up through our system that we're going to have to think about. Bobby Centrone is a 22-year-old, number 85 prospect in baseball. Has never made it above high A ball yet, but still, so he would be very overmatched at the major league level right now. but don't want to take the risk of somebody picking up Centrone, so we're going to put him on the 40-man. Marco Estrada is one of our starting pitching prospects. It looks like in a best-case scenario, he's kind of a fifth starter, maybe a fourth starter. He was solid in A-ball and high A-ball this past year, 15-6 record, 3.95 ERA. Don't think he's quite ready for the majors, but certainly don't want to lose him. So we are going to move Estrada to the 40-man roster. And while we're thinking about Estrada, we are actually going to also promote him to AA for next season. And then Jorge Lebron is another one of the big prospects in our system. Second-round draft choice back in 2030. Another corner outfielder. We've talked a lot about those. Keeping him around. It stinks that we have to get the clock ticking on him by putting him onto the major league roster. But definitely don't want to lose him. Think he could be an above-average hitter, like the speed that he has. Probably a fourth outfielder on a good team like ours, but certainly don't want to take the risk of losing him. So we're going to put him onto the 40-man also, which puts us at 39 players. Alex Cervantes is a decent first base prospect, but profiles at best as a average-ish major league hitter who's not good defensively. Was our second-round pick 5 years ago, but if someone wants to have him on the major league roster all year, good luck to him. Lee Dixon, I think he's just too far away, and he's not an incredible prospect. If someone wants to take him, they can. Shane Gray is a decent first base prospect, but he's 25 years old, never been above AA ball, not that great defensively. Edgar Luna, center fielder. Meh. If someone wants to play him in the majors, go ahead. And Juan Celes. Like the glove. Love the speed and the ability to bunt. But he hit just 240 in A-ball this past year. I just don't think he's ever going to be a major league hitter. So don't need to protect any of them. And we will still have one spot to potentially bring on somebody in the Rule 5 draft. Hey, and they're asking us if we want to pursue Mario Mendoza of the famous Mendoza line. Obviously, this is a different Mario Mendoza, young pitcher for the Twins. I think we did look at him at one point. You can see he's got an incredible arsenal, 6 pitches, including a incredible circle change up, really good curve. Incredible stuff overall. Great stamina, great personality, acceptable movement and control. Lefty from Albany, New York. I am assuming the cost for him is going to be quite prohibitive. Yeah, I mean, if we threw in our number one prospect, Carranza, there's still not another player we could add in. If we added in Bobby Centrone, still not another player we could add in. So, yeah, would love to have Mario Mendoza on the team, but not going to be practical. But we are at the Rule 5 draft, picking near the end of it. Let's see who's available when we get to Kansas City's pick. And our scouting director recommends we don't do anything. So we'll take a look at the top guys out there and see if we disagree with Travis Lee's suggestion to do nothing. You're going to think I'm crazy. Well, you probably already do if you've been watching multiple episodes, but a corner outfielder, Javi Medina, he's not major league ready, but you look at this profile and he could be a pretty good player. He was in rookie ball last year where he hit 371. I don't understand why they moved him from A ball where he hit 278 with a 132 OPS plus, and then they pushed him back down to rookie ball this past season. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. We've got tons of outfielders right now. The goal with him would just be to stash him as our 26th man, 5th outfielder on the major league roster this coming season. get full rights to him and then put him down in Double A or Triple A for 2036 so he could continue to develop. I just worry that having to keep him on the major league roster for an entire year would be just too negative for his development. But he's an intriguing guy to see out there. Also interesting, Jimmy Fallow, who we just traded away about a month ago, is also out there. Kind of a similar situation. Fallow's a little more advanced, having spent the last 2 years in A and high A ball. But certainly, I don't think he has as much upside as potentially Medina does. I'm kind of intrigued by him. He was the 17th pick in the draft just 3 years ago. It kind of defeats the purpose of being a team that's playing for this year to have him up. But honestly, the guy that we would send down would be Soto, who's really kind of, and he does have option years left. Soto is a really good kind of defensive outfielder. You can see he's got great speed. He's a good bunter, great personality. But he's not a great major league hitter. He's a perfect fifth outfielder because he can play any position defensively in the outfield. You can use him as a pinch runner. He can bunt when you need. He's durable. And he's hit really well at the major league level, too. You can see he's got a .318 career batting average and 314 at-bats over these last couple of years. So wouldn't love sending him down to AAA for the entire year. But if we're being honest, Medina has a lot more upside. I mean, if Medina really develops, plus contact, plus gap power, plus home run power, kind of an acceptable eye, acceptable avoiding strikeouts. He's an interesting bat. He's not a horrible fielder. He's a left fielder. He's 6'3". You could play him at first if you had to. I know it seems kind of crazy given that I've just been talking about the glut of corner outfielders that we have. But I think I'm going to pick Medina and bring him to camp. Worst case scenario is if we decide we don't want to use our last roster spot on him, we just send him back. And if we're able to just kind of stash him on the major league roster all year, then he's ours. And then we can put him back in the minors for a season. And 2 years from now, he's going to be 24 years old and potentially major league ready. I'm going to draft Medina. And that will fill our major league roster. So that is going to be the end of the Rule 5 draft for us. You can see there was a fair amount of activity. Nobody picked from our team. And we're taking a flyer on the young outfielder, Javi Medina. And now we brought on our potential lefty reliever in Jesus Bibbs, who still seems to be expecting the starting rotation, even though we did not promise him that role. Now, given that we have filled up the 40-man roster, this is going to necessitate us waiving and DFAing somebody. Not the end of the world. I'm sure there's players that we can waive and DFA, but we normally don't run with a full 40-man roster, so it is a somewhat rare situation for us to be in a situation where we've got to let somebody go. And I think we have gotten trade offers for Jorge Diaz before. He's a 34-year-old that we've had primarily at AAA the last 3 seasons. Did play a little bit with us at the major league level in 2033. He's a good, versatile utility player, good personality, not much of a bat. He's only been in the majors for 20 days. I'm going to just see if anybody wants to offer us someone young for him, And if we can get a prospect for Diaz, he'll be the one that we move on from. Not really offering us prospects, even though that's what we were looking for. They're offering us a lot of expensive veterans, or actually just two expensive veterans in Eli Serrano and Brett Beatty. Yeah, that's not really what we're looking to do. So I think we will just go ahead and waive in DFA Jorge Diaz. And that will allow us to put Jesus Bibbs on the Major League roster. And the first thing we are going to do is change Jesus Bibbs' position to a reliever. And you can see that makes a difference. He's now a 4-star potential person as a reliever. His stuff has 60 potential. It's really the role he should have been in. He may be angry since he wants to be a starter, but I think he could be a very effective left-handed reliever for us. Looking at the rest of the pitching staff. Oh, come on, Bobby Crosby. We're not going to start this guy, Crosby. No. He is a reliever. So I'm obviously going to have to mess with Bobby Crosby's views on the world, because I do not want to be using Jesus Bibbs as a reliever. He's not a reliever. That third pitch, that changeup, is just not quite good enough. And I think he's going to be an awesome starter. He's going to be an awesome reliever. I don't want him in the starting rotation, though. So that'll be a debate between Bobby Crosby and myself as we get closer to the season. But I like what we've done. The trades for Hillman and Tejada, front end, I don't know about front end, but a very good starter and a closer. And then bringing on Garces, Choi, and now Bibbs. I feel like we've rebuilt the pitching staff on the fly without really making any long-term commitments. Hillman is a 2-year deal, Tejada in the final year of his contract, and then Bibbs, 1-year deal, and then Garces and Choi, both 1-year deals with team options for next year. So I feel like we've got a much better pitching staff than we had a month and a half ago in game time, and we haven't really had to make any long-term commitments to build it. And the calendar is now turned to January 1st, 2035, and I think the heavy lifting for the Royals is done. Now, we still have a ton of money left, almost $19 million for free agents, which interestingly is almost exactly the amount that our budget was increased this season. I don't think there's any guarantees we're going to be at $262 million next year, so we certainly probably have been being pretty prudent, not making a lot of long-term commitments over the past several weeks of game time. In our next episode, we'll kind of finish up with free agency, see if there's any other trades to be had out there, and then we're going to jump in to spring training and getting ready for the season. You can see with the ticket price of $39, we're not on pace to sell quite as many season tickets as we have in past years. So despite the good fan loyalty and the outstanding fan interest, seems like somewhere in the $38 to $39 range is kind of the maximum that the Royals are able to get to in terms of being able to potentially sell out their stadium consistently. So we'll focus on some of those financial issues in the next episode, and also focus on spring training, some final free agency moves, and getting this team ready to hopefully defend a World Series championship here in 2035. If you've got thoughts on our free agent acquisitions, the trades that we've made, everything else and anything else we've done in this episode, would love to hear them down below. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.